Baby, what's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Matty Pace coming at you live from the Matty Mo Show, the host with the most mojo. And today, I am so excited to bring you our brand new mini-series, The Life of a Type 1 Diabetic. That's right, The Life of a Type 1 Diabetic. Now, I have had Type 1 diabetes for 33 years. It's pretty much my whole life. And what I want to accomplish with this series is to shine some light on type 1 diabetics, a little bit about what we go through from my own personal experience, and I want to also open up the door for anyone out there that has a question, seeking some guidance, maybe advice, or even heard about a myth with type 1 diabetes and would like some clarity. You can feel free to put a question or two in the chat, and I'd be more than happy to make some videos on the comments that you leave me in regards to type 1 diabetes. As a type 1 diabetic, I know that there's a lot of other type 1 diabetics out there that are struggling and kind of feel out of place in a lot of social situations and just in general amongst their peers. There's a lot of type 1 diabetics that are the only person that has it in their family. And not only can this be challenging for people with type 1 diabetes, but it can also be pretty challenging for the people surrounding those people. I myself was always surrounded by people that didn't have type 1 diabetes. My mom, my dad, my family members. Only my Uncle Dean had type 1 diabetes. And he still does, because he's still here. I love you, Uncle Dean. But basically, this mini-series is about helping people out there understand type 1 diabetes a little bit better. So I want to give you a little background about myself and my journey, as this is the first episode of many to come for life as a type 1 diabetic. One of the main questions that I've been asked in my life of having diabetes is, how did you know that you had diabetes? And this is a story that I love to tell. So when I was a little kid, I was 4 years old. I was at my Uncle Ricky's house with my mom and my dad. I believe it was a big party they were having somewhere around the holidays. And at that time, as a young kid, I really didn't throw out too many temper tantrums. I didn't yell and scream. I was a pretty well-behaved kid from what my mom and dad told me. But that day, I was acting not like myself. I was incredibly thirsty. I was going to the bathroom every 5 minutes. I started to just yell and just throw a little bit of a fit, to the point where, and I don't hold this against my parents, they put me in timeout, which, you know, I definitely deserved at that time, because that's what you're gonna do to a kid that's lashing out like that. But when they still heard me yelling and just not being myself, my mom looked at my dad and she said, I think there's something wrong, because he's never like this and we've never seen this before. I think we should take him to the hospital. And it was at that point that my life and my parents' and family's life changed forever. I was put in the hospital and I was held there for, I think, 3 or 4 days. The doctor, they ran tests on me. They came back, they told my parents, one of you or both of you should pack a bag, because we got to keep him here for a few days while we run these tests. Turns out they found out that I had type 1 diabetes. And like I said, at that time, the only other type 1 diabetic in my family was my Uncle Dean. But as for that, no one else really understood what diabetes was, how to maintain it, and all the things that go along with it. The struggles and a lot of things that a lot of people without diabetes don't know about. Now, for those of you that are actually unsure about what type 1 diabetes is and how it differentiates from type 2 diabetes, type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune disease where basically your body sends chemicals into your pancreas and starts destroying the pancreas producing insulin. And what insulin does in your body is it keeps you at a level glucose level so you don't get too high or too low. And in type 2 diabetics, they just have a dramatic amount of insulin resistance, which is why oftentimes you'll see obese people with type 2 diabetes. And once they change their diet and they start working out a little bit, exercising, drinking more water, usually in most cases, they can get healthy enough to the point where their body can start producing insulin a lot more fluidly, and it doesn't have really any resistance like it once did. But the body is complex, and type 1 and type 2 diabetics, we both experience different things in our own way. As a type 1 diabetic, I was told you have to cut out the sugar, you have to focus on eating limited carbohydrates and different things like that growing up. But I really got a chance to understand more about how the human body works, which plays dramatically, even until this day, into my physical health, which affects everything. So the target number for a diabetic, like I mentioned, the blood glucose level, is between 80 and 125. That's the sweet spot. And my body produces no insulin, which means you never know if it's getting too high or too low. And we have to use external sources to be able to get the insulin into our body to maintain that blood glucose level. You can do this in many ways. One of the most common, and for myself, for many, many years, I was on injections. I was taking syringes of insulin multiple times a day, on top of doing 5 to 6 blood tests a day, and even probably a little bit more when I was younger, because my parents really had to make sure that everything was running smoothly. But as I got older, I then transitioned from syringes over to what's called an insulin pump, and I'll show you what that looks like right now. This right here is a mini Medtronic, and basically, I know you can't really see it, but the tube is attached to a cartridge of insulin, and basically, the pin that this is sitting on pushes up a certain amount that releases insulin through this tube that comes out this end right here. Let's see, that's a little needle, but that one doesn't go in my body, but you can still see a little drip of insulin there, so I better get this back in my sight. And before I show you my sight, I just want to let you know that you will see a little bit of my stomach. You won't see any needles, however. You will just see what transports the insulin into my body. So this right here, what I just showed you, clips in to this right here, and this is just sitting here, and then it travels through this tube in through here, and on this right here there is a little needle. It is 6 millimeters long that sits inside of my body, and the insulin drips through that needle into my bloodstream, and that's when the monitoring or the leveling of my blood glucose levels starts to happen. There's a lot of different types of insulin. Most type 1 diabetics take a fast-acting insulin, whereas type 2 diabetics, if they do take a shot or 2 shots a day, they have a very long-lasting, very slow, not as intense. But since our bodies in a type 1, like I said, don't produce any insulin out of the pancreas, I need a constant flow of insulin coming into my body throughout all hours of the day. And anyone out there that wants to know more about that, go ahead and leave me a comment, and I can go into delivery settings, how often I get deliveries, and a whole lot of ratios, insulin to carb ratios, and your blood glucose ratios and things like that, how often you get it and how to figure that out. But for this video, we'll just leave it there. So now that you know what type 1 diabetes is and how it differentiates from type 2 diabetes, I want to go into a question that I think is probably one of the most asked from when I was a little kid. And if you're type 1 diabetic, let me know if you ever got this question. Does it hurt? Does it hurt sticking needles in your body? Does it hurt doing all the little finger pricks that you see a lot of diabetics do? And the answer to that question, for me anyways, is no. Most of the time, it doesn't really hurt. The finger sticks don't hurt at all. It's just a little prick. It's really quick. It's nice and easy. Little droplet of blood. That's it. But for the site that I showed you, that little site where the insulin actually goes into my bloodstream, that can definitely hurt a little bit if you catch a tender area in your body. If you hit a capillary, that's not usually a good thing. If you hit a spot that doesn't have too much fat and has a little bit more muscle, it can definitely hurt a lot. But overall, I'd say it doesn't hurt to the extent that a lot of people think it may hurt. And to be honest, the more that you do it, the more that you just get used to it, and it really doesn't faze you that much. And it all started for me, like I said, when I was 4 years old. We got introduced to a life-changing doctor, Dr. Marianne Quinn. I gotta give her a round of applause. If it were not for that beautiful angel, no telling where I'd be today. But she not only helped me, she helped my parents really understand diabetic management and diabetic care when neither one of them ever had any experience with it. So shout out to Dr. Marianne Quinn. You are amazing at what you do. We were going to trips when I first got diagnosed every few months to Boston Children's Hospital, where we would receive the best care in the world, in my opinion, for diabetes endocrinology. And I'll tell you, the older I got, we started going from every 3 months to then every 6 months. And I know for anyone out there, if you're a parent, especially with type 1 diabetic children or a child, I can only imagine how difficult it is for you guys. But then again, that's why I made this mini series, is to help people like yourselves that maybe can't get in touch with a doctor. Not that I am one, but there are a lot of things that I know from my own perspective of having type 1 diabetes, especially as a 4-year-old, seeing what my parents were navigating through, and I can help answer your questions in any way you need. And the last thing I want to touch on before I ramble onward and onward, because we got a lot of videos in this series where we can cover a whole bunch of things, is another common question that I used to get all the time, and still do. How do you know when your blood sugar gets low? And first, before I tell you that, the difference between a low blood sugar and a high blood sugar is very different. When your blood sugar is high, that means you need more insulin. Insulin brings your blood sugar down more to that 80 and 120 range. So if you have a blood sugar that's 200, 300, or God forbid 400 or 500, you need at least usually 10 units of insulin when you get to the 300-400 area a lot of times. But using fast-acting insulin, like me for years, Humalog, it always played a big role in bringing those numbers down when they would get up and get high. And it's natural, it's gonna happen. No matter how good you are at diabetes management, the body is still the body. It is an unpredictable vessel. You can only do your best to kind of minimize the damage, let's say. Because every high blood sugar and every low blood sugar, the type 1 diabetic's body, their organs get damaged, which is why the eyes are crucial, because you can lose your vision if you get really bad blood sugars over a very extended period of time. And if you have a lot of low blood sugars all the time, not only is that going to do the same thing, but then you run the risk of bottoming out and crashing and being able to even pass out sometimes. And I gotta say, in my 33 years of having diabetes, I've only passed out from diabetes 2 times, and they both happened when I was a little kid. I've had a lot of close calls in my adult years, but it's been a lot easier to bounce back from those lows, just having more access to information, growing up with it, and just really knowing my body. So that being said, now you know what a high blood sugar is and what you need to do in order to bring it down. We can now jump into the low blood sugar. So low blood sugars, man, they can be very testy. You know, high blood sugars, you can just get really thirsty, have to go to the bathroom a lot, just kind of like what I was a little kid getting diagnosed. You can throw temper tantrums, but the low blood sugars, man, you can get so lethargic. You can almost seem really drunk in a sense. My Uncle Dean one time got pulled over on the highway because his blood sugar was so low that the police thought that he was drunk and driving. When they realized he was type 1 diabetic, they instantly knew, well, he's not drunk. He is on the verge of passing out. We need to take proper action and get his blood sugar levels up. Now, if your blood sugar bottoms out to 30 to 40, you know, that is the danger zone, as they say. That is the danger zone. And, 50's manageable, 60's manageable, 70's very manageable, 80 is manageable. But when you get to 40 or 30 or even lower, that's when you run the risk of passing out. And it can be very scary, both from a type 1 diabetic's perspective, not knowing if we're going to be okay if we pass out, especially if no one's around. You know, if you stay unconscious for long enough, it can be fatal. You can have brain damage, massive organ damage. You're not getting enough oxygen to your muscles, to your body, to your brain. In some drastic cases, you can pass away if no one finds you for hours upon hours, which I just want to say, always have an emergency contact in your phone or on hand that you can call, even if it's 911 and you feel like you're unable to handle this low blood sugar by yourself. Listen, it is better safe than sorry. Get the help you need before you're unable to. And that goes back into the original question I stated. How do you know when your blood sugar is low? And the best thing that I can tell anybody is the same way that you can kind of feel a sickness coming on, you know, when you're just kind of not feeling right, you feel like, oh, I can feel like a headache coming on, I think I'm gonna get sick. That kind of same feeling that people without diabetes has is very similar to the feeling of being low. You just kind of know, you know, and after a while, you know your body really well. Lack of focus, you can get very flush in your skin, your eyes can be heavily glossy and glazed, you can start to talk but not make any sense, you can be very lethargic, very low energy, and you can even get very irritable and sometimes even violent. I'll never forget one morning, my blood sugar was so low. I woke up and my blood sugar was on its way. It was on its way out. It was all the way down. And I stood over the sink in the bathroom, washing my hands under warm water, just leaving them there like this. Something very unorthodox and something that I would never really do. My mom was wondering what was going on. And this even happened with the nurse at elementary school one time where I took a swing. Now, obviously, little kid, not going to do much damage. I didn't make contact with my mom or that nurse, but I will say that it was just so out of my realm of control. So just stay aware of that in a type 1 diabetic, and that's how you know that, listen, you need to take control here. You need to sit that person down, go get them some honey, go get them some frosting, go get them some juice and crackers, glucose tabs, whatever it's gonna take. You gotta get that blood sugar back up. But that's how you kind of distinguish a low and a high from the feelings that they have, and also some things to look at if you are somebody that is with a type 1 diabetic. So that being said, that's a little bit of what I wanted to cover in this first video. I know it might have been a lot of information to take in, but feel free to go back and watch any parts that you feel like you want to hear a little bit more on. And like I said, feel encouraged to ask some questions. We're a judgment-free zone here. I want to help you. I want to help you, whether you have type 1 diabetes or know someone with type 1 diabetes. I just want to spread awareness, and I want to help people understand this disease a lot better. And at the beginning of this video, I said I have type 1 diabetes. And the reason I say I have type 1 diabetes as opposed to I am a diabetic is because I have diabetes, but it doesn't have me, and it doesn't have any of us. And if you're someone struggling with that and you feel alone, you found a new home, and we're here to help you. So like I said, put any questions in the comments below, and I will be making a video a week and showcasing some things that you guys want to know more about, or just a little bit more about my own personal experiences, some of the struggles, and yeah, that's about it. So I want to say thank you so much for your time today. It's been an honor and a pleasure informing you a little bit about myself, type 1 diabetic. We always have a lucky charm here to let you know. As you can see, the medical symbol on the back, it says Matthew Pace, diabetes, insulin dependent, for those times if you do pass out. Usually paramedics and police officers, firefighters, they'll check to see if you have any tags on you. Or if you guys don't already know, in your phone, there is on the main page, when you have your phone screen on like this, my beautiful wife, you can hold the volume up button and the side button. You can just tap it and it'll bring this up, and you can go over to medical ID. And if you swipe that, it'll show you all the information that medical personnel needs to know, like what medications you're on, what allergies you have, your emergency contacts, your conditions, and additional information, as well as notes, which mine says insulin dependent. So that being said, if you don't know about that feature, I'm sure it's on all phones, not just iPhones. Definitely use that, especially if you don't have a necklace or a bracelet or a form of identification that lets people know that you are type 1 diabetic. But other than that, thank you so much again for your time. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys, answering your questions, and just helping people with type 1 diabetes and people that know people with type 1 diabetes. So thank you so much. As always, it's a pleasure. I'll see you on the next one, and just know that you got this. As always, one life, one love. I'm out, baby. Let's go.